be exactly what you want to be without all of the fear around you. We have to stand up together. Welcome to all of you who follow the Built to Exit podcast with me, your humble host, Justyn Sisneros. Today is going to be a fantastic conversation with somebody who has become my friend and is far outpacing my intellect level. There's very few people in life that I've met that I have to run to keep up with when it comes to intelligence. Justyn Hornor, the CEO of ONX, is one of them. He has a very interesting background. We'll let him, brag a little bit about himself. But I just want to start this episode out and kind of lay it out for you. Most of you that are watching me, I mean, almost all of you that are watching me, you own your own business. You're a partner in a business. You're thinking about starting your own business. You're involved around business. And one of the hot topics these days is AI. And obviously on my side, those of you know we have two things. We have the Built to Exit program, which is where we help companies prep themselves up for sale and for exit. My wife and I own multiple businesses. I'm in multiple partnerships. I'm a shareholder and own a company that represents ONX. And my wife and I are in business and we're which means that we see the same things that you see. We're not just one of those consultants that read a book and we come and tell you, oh, this is what we read about or what we heard about. We're seeing the same things. We're facing down the same. We have AI. What do we do about AI in our different businesses? We're facing down those same issues. And so that's why a lot of you follow here, because we are business owners. And also on top of that, we've had multiple exits along the way. So that's for the newbies, for the if you've never seen this show. And I want to get to my guest. Again, somebody who I don't run in his world very often. I don't run with people like him very often because he is that quintessential tech genius. And there's some things that are in his past. He'll tell you more about it. But when you're one of the ones chosen to take Walmart and their system of self-checkout and say, oh, we need people like that to figure that out and to get that involved involved in all of their stores and get it running smooth and have all the tech work. That's Justyn.
Thanks so much, Jason. Now you've gotten to see the first lab, right? The smaller lab where wires were everywhere, and we had equipment spread out across the place as we've evolved into a more sophisticated lab here in Las Vegas. So it's great that you've gotten to be along for that journey, and excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Walk us through, and I want to kind of slow walk into some of the deeper tech, but walk us through the current HPC AI trends that you're seeing from the architectures, AMD and NVIDIA, and avoid, trying to avoid the vendor lock-in, and why should my audience of business owners, why should they care?
It's an interesting place that we're in when it comes to the artificial intelligence space right now. Um, and for your audience, there's two stages, if you will, or phases of artificial intelligence. The first phase is going to be training a model. And this is where the businesses leverage their custom data that they've built, their real pot of gold, if you will, that they put together in their customers, and other insights. They use that to build a model, and then they got to deploy that model in inference. And so as we were kind of emerging through our own kind of first principles approach to building artificial intelligence more efficiently, we recognized that there were different architectures that were present in the market. So if you look at something like NVIDIA's Hopper versus their Blackwell, those are very different architectures, and they have trade-offs. And then when you go over to AMD with their MI series, their Instinct line, or Intel's Gaudi, the types of chips, the way they organize their architectures are very different. And that presented us opportunities where we learned that there were different chips that do different things in different ways. And instead of needing just one chip or buying one chip and trying to do everything on one chip, it became very clear to us that we needed the toolkit to be able to deploy that training in particular to the right chip at the right time. And then different models might require a different chip. And what we identified through that process was at first we built the software to make that possible, which I won't get into the nuts and bolts on intermediate representations and the other complexities around computer science. Happy to do that at some point. But once we solved that, then we had to figure out how to network it up. So for the last year and a half, we spent working with partners to develop the network topology and architecture so that we could connect up any chip and we could even combine them. So we could put AMD and NVIDIA and different kinds of architectures all next to each other. And that includes things like ASICs, FPGAs, and other exotic classes of chips. Um, One of the easiest ways to help explain the novelty is that you would typically when you're buying these chips, especially the enterprise grade, is you're going to get stuck with eight of a single kind of chip on a server. Our server, we can put right now, we can put 48 accelerators on a single server, and they can be 48 different kinds if you wanted to. So you could have one Instinct from AMD. You could have a Blackwell from NVIDIA. You could have a Hopper from NVIDIA. Doesn't matter. As far as our system is concerned, if we can connect it to our network, we're able to orchestrate that and orchestrate a lot more of them. And that gives us power savings, it gives us flexibility, it gives us improved speed as the data is moving across the chips. So it's all still very early as the chips are intentionally making that difficult. And that's where we see a lot of vendor lock. It's a lot easier to just buy one and try to build your entire AI strategy around one chip. And we're trying to give the market a much more sophisticated way to build what they need. So you're not vendor locked. You're not stuck with a single chip. And then later, when you need to upgrade or change or you learn something, it's much easier for you to swap out the right chips for your needs. So the trends that we're seeing in particular is that the big companies, AMD and NVIDIA in particular, are building entire closed ecosystems. I know there's language around you're keeping it open, but the reality is you end up with the same chips fully locked in and the same network switches, the same power supplies, all of that are completely locked in. It becomes very difficult to transition if you need to transition, and you almost certainly will need to transition to different chips. So that's a trend we're observing right now. And from a technical standpoint, I would caution that businesses that are wanting to build their own AI platforms and products become very aware of what those chips can do for you and make sure that you're getting the right chips to solve that problem.
I love it. What I saw from a perspective of a business, as a business owner and owning multiple businesses, and this again across that we're in medical and we're in tech and we're in cannabis and we're and the businesses that my wife and I own. I looked at this through the lens of some advice that I got from Corrine Strom Clark, who I'm going to introduce you to, but she's been my tech, whenever I had something that came up tech, she was the first one that I went and grabbed, because she's done so many amazing things and in the business. And she always had a first principle in the work that she did in tech was that she really loves plumbing. Right. And when I
Yep,
looked at AI, and I looked at it, I was like, what's the plumbing behind AI? Right. And it's the hardware, software interaction, because it's just, again, forgive me if I step on any tech toes out there, but for my simple mind as a business owner, it's a server, right? AI is a server.
that's
And
correct. Yep.
right. And so when I looked at that and then I met you and you started to explain how these things work together and I looked at it and I said, okay, so if I own or I'm building a data center, what do I care about? Right? I care about optimizing every square inch of that investment. And looking at what you built with Ionics, I saw, okay, power usage reduction, which means that your heat output, which means less air conditioning, which means less footprint, which means that, and then you get into the performance of connecting all of these together, which is really the genius of what you've done. Is how do you get these things to work? One chip may do this thing better on the precision side. This may be better on the speed side, and getting them to do the job that they're doing, that they're best at, inside of one contained unit that may loop to other units to solve the problem, right?
That's
And
right.
so I saw that and I was like, oh, what would the price reductions be? And I started to do that math and I'm like, holy cow. Like holy cow. And you got and you were in the beginning you didn't have third party verification, and now you do, right?
That's
and
right.
and so there's no you making a claim out on some island by yourself. Now it's somebody else going, holy crap, the things that they were saying, it's actually better than what they're you very rarely do you find that in business, when the claims are actually worse than the reality. Very,
Right.
very rare. So I started doing all that math and I'm like, wow, it's millions. It's millions and millions and millions for a small data center, right? For a small
That's
data,
right.
before you ever even get into the business model that it's now, the performance, the speed, it starts to outpace your competitors when you see these, like Grok and Chat GPT, and you see these guys, they're like, oh, one's ahead today, the other one's ahead today, the other one's ahead, right? And
That's
that's what
right.
I saw. And why I really fell in love with this opportunity was because the real world plumbing, and I hate to reduce it to that, but for me, and then I went to Corrine and I said, "Hey, here, look at this thing," and she's like, "Oh my God, you found like the gold standard in in plumbing for this deal." So I'll stop there a little bit, and you tell me, what stands out about my conclusions.
No, as a business owner, I love how deeply you've gone down into the rabbit hole of these architectures and understanding them. It's rare. It's not very often when I talk to the ownership level that they understand this, but these are very expensive CapEx purchases or OpEx purchases if you do like, use it as a service. So I think business owners need to be aware if you're going to be spending that kind of capital, make sure you buy or rent the right type for you. And what I get concerned about and I hear a lot is, well, it's just easier to buy one and go.
Mm,
And that may be true as you're getting off, as you're going from like zero to AI. But as you
yeah,
get more sophisticated with what you're building and how you're deploying it, you're going to want that flexibility because you're going to need to adapt. This de-risks your purchase of this kind of equipment and the kinds of expenses that you're making to get these kinds of products online. So being able to have a flexible ecosystem that can evolve with your customers and evolve with the products you need to deploy is absolutely critical. And it's going to give those businesses that understand that a very important edge. Because if you can imagine having to go, imagine if you bought a building and then you realize that was the wrong location. That's
yes.
a massive shift that you're going to have to do.
I've done that
And
before. It gives
right,
me it
right.
gives me the chills.
Yes. So, and it is these kinds of exhibits. These are very expensive. These are millions of dollars in a single rack in many cases. So, we want to make sure that the business owners, that those companies that are building AI products, have the flexibility to evolve and not be locked into a specific vendor that may not meet their needs in 2 years.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Well, let's move to what the machine, what the plumbing is meant, why you did this, why you're building it, like what is running on it, and the future of that, which, we're on the kind of edge a little bit of agentic side of AI, right? And so I wrote this question down so I would get it perfect because I want to hear your response. So explain agentic AI and prompt engineering in simple terms. I love when you do this, by the way. And how is it transforming? Because that's where we're tipping into, right? There's two sides. Let me preempt what spurred getting this question right. I look at the research we know. There's a lot of people using AI, right?
Right.
And as in any new technology, there's the snake oil people, right?
Right.
Which they get out there and they say, "Oh, I'm an AI expert. Pay me thousands and thousands of dollars as a consultant, and we're going to make you bazillions of dollars. Okay. I want to set those people aside because a little bit of due diligence really filters those out. I talk to very smart people. Very smart people watch my show and they're doing the due diligence to step into that. Now you get into the usage of AI, and I'm seeing two massive trends. One is that people are actually becoming dumber because they're just letting ChatGPT. And this is a study. This isn't Jason's
Oh
opinion.
yeah,
There's
you're
been
absolutely
studies,
right.
right, from Harvard and a couple of Oxford, a couple of Oxford deals where their intelligence is literally dropping because they're now using it as a crutch. The third realm that I look at is when you have intellectual people that are hardworking, have a business mind, they understand output. Look, less than 5% of companies ever really get sold. So, our audience is kind of, it's narrow and very smart. And so, but now you can combine that, and they see this as a tool to combine with them, and those are the ones that are really starting to pick up winning, right? And so in those three realms, I know that I deal mostly with that third rail of human beings. And so I wanted to ask this question for you to the explain agentic AI like you did in the office was phenomenal for me. I have that whiteboard, in my notes. In simple terms, how is it transforming workforces and unlocking productivities? Productivity, and then there's a follow up on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, agentic AI in simple terms means that we are training smaller models to be experts on something. And typically, those are coupled together around a reasoning model. So, when somebody asks a question or prompts it to do a series of tasks, that model, that reasoning model, reaches out and connects to experts that have been trained to get a more refined answer, because you can't train a single model to have all the answers. And that's not what AI is really meant to do, as in like a knowledge store. And so you train these models. And I'll use a simple example of, let's say you're asking a finance question that includes tax law and things like that. You may have models that are trained on tax law for your locality, and
Mhm.
then also it has like financial policy expertise. So when you ask it a question or give it a series of tasks, it reaches out to those individual models, gets that expert advice, and then gives you an answer that has been tailored by those experts. That's one use case. The other side of agentic is essentially going off and doing work for you. So that could be reaching out to a website, logging in as you, doing a series of tasks that you've asked it to do based on the interface that is it sees, and coming back with the answer that or telling you that it completed that task. So there's kind of two, I would say, legs of agentic AI that have emerged. I tend to deal with that first one, which is how do we efficiently build and train and fine tune those experts in particular as efficiently as possible, because it's a very complex task that we can get into and why it's so important in our system. But it's important to understand that agentic includes that ability to essentially get out of the way and let it go do a bunch of things for you and come back and say when it's done and report on what it accomplished or failed at.
Love that. And one of the things that blew my mind when, I'm sitting there listening to you, because again, one of the separators of the successful in life, I don't care if it's sports or tech or business or, church, whatever it is this concept of being very clear about the outcome, right? And
Absolutely.
you don't even really, and I find this about people that are like you don't even really speak about it because it's almost an insult to intelligence to be working on a project. And this is, again, I find this with you, and then I know there's this giant chasm between a lot of other people in tech, because they're building their machine. They've fallen in love with their baby. They haven't fallen in love with the outcome.
Right.
And so this thing that dawned on me while you were talking about the agentic AI was, I can't even build that if I'm not clear on the outcome, right? I can't, and this is for the business owners very specifically. We've been talking for years about the idea of driving predictable as you're building to exit. What somebody's going to buy in your business is the predictability and dependability of the revenue and the quality of the revenue, right? You have yourself, you've had 7 startups, you had 5 exits. One or two of those, or one of them was like mine, which was, involuntary. Then you've had some
Great
success.
learning experience.
Right. Yeah, great learning experience. It's probably why you're sitting in the
Mm.
CEO role and people listen to me about businesses because I've screwed them up a lot, right? And figured
Yep,
out how not to. But when I was sitting there, I was like, okay, so now we're dealing with the people that understand that they've got to build SOPs, which is simply a how-to for an employee, step by step, how to predictably create that outcome. Now we're programming agentic AI with those same things and figuring out AI by itself, AI plus human, or human only. We're kind of
that's
in
right.
that filter right now, right?
Yes, yeah, I agree. And one of the ways, just as a step back a little bit, one of the ways that I anchor our outcomes is we are very customer focused, very
Mm,
empathy driven, sitting down and understanding what's that end user that's going to touch that system, that SOP, that exit eventually. Who is that persona? We
mm,
really want to understand that persona intimately, what they're looking to, what's the ideal product we could deliver to them, and then you go backwards from that and make sure that everything that you're building has that outcome that's going to, we call it, delight that customer. And
mm,
so, and so when we look at things like agentic AI, this goes to your prompt engineering questions. We see a lot of folks using prompting all wrong. And
mm,
so as we're transitioning from like your Google search, where you're quickly finding information, we spend a lot of time engineering our prompts. And in fact, hours sometimes as we sit down and think about what is the outcome we want this agentic flow or this system that we're about to kick off. What are the outcomes we're looking for? We define those. Um, and we sit down and often we will pit different systems against each other as we're drafting those documents. And so we will essentially, it's called a generative adversarial network, where you're making one system like ChatGPT compete against Gemini, for example,
mm,
or Anthropic, where we're having them essentially analyze: Does this clear? Does this make sense? Where could we add additional detail? Where might you get stumble? Where you might have a lack of clarity? And we go back and forth, and then we finally end up with our kind of super prompt. And
mm,
then you kick off the project, you let it go. Another piece that I think we see kind of going to dumbing people down a bit is folks are getting comfortable clicking the button and walking away.
mm,
And as engineers, we call it vibe coding,
mm,
where we're sitting there vibing with the agentic flow. We're
mm,
observing it, we're monitoring it. We'll see it go down a rabbit hole, and we can redirect it. And we're very intentional with that process. And so we're seeing like a 40-to-1 ratio now, where one engineer could, with an agentic system, can do the work of 40 engineers. And that's a game changer for small businesses, especially as you need that expertise. And it becomes more and more critical to have very senior people that really understand that outcome intimately and the implications of that outcome across architectures and other business units, for example.
mm,
And so you need that very senior thought process as you're defining that prompt, and these are often multi-page documents for us. If you can imagine sitting down in your work with ChatGPT, you might be, if you're more sophisticated, have a paragraph or two as you're defining what you need that system to accomplish for you. Often we are multi-page documents that we put together, even with graphics, supporting documents, research that we pull together. We do a lot of work before we kick off these agentic flows.
mm.
And that's something that's helped us accelerate significantly. And as we were talking about trends earlier, and I know we're kind of veering off here, as we are seeing more and more companies get comfortable with using these agentic systems, we're seeing trends or anticipating trends towards needing to hire a lot fewer people in the knowledge worker space.
Yeah.
And of course, here in the U.S., we've really built our society around knowledge workers, and we
Yeah.
anticipate that being incredibly disruptive. And those companies that learn to use these tools well are going to be able to accelerate, and those that don't learn how to use them at all are, in my view, likely going to fall into those involuntary exit categories very quickly.
Yeah. Love that. It's well said and accurate. There's a lot of people that do these podcasts and all they want to do is pump sunshine and rainbows up people's butts, and that's not what we're here for. I really do
Mm,
believe the people that follow me and listen to me and reach out and we've done work with, they're really looking to what to do next. They're not locked into, oh, it's always been this way. This is just another stupid fad. Like, those are the people who are going to get washed out to shore, right? But it brings me that whole entire segment that you just said. It brings me to a core belief that I adopted through a couple of mentors, maybe 20 years ago. I find this when I say this on a podcast, I find it ironic because I get paid to speak. But when you speak less and you listen more, that's actually the higher quality of leadership, right? And you and I are both in situations, but I've noticed that when you're not talking, you're intently listening. That's something that I admire about you. Which brings me to the understanding that I got, which was the quality of your life, the quality of your business, the quality of your relationships, the quality of your health is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions that you ask, not the answers that you get or give. It's directly proportional to the quality of the questions that you ask. So, hi, my name is Justyn Sisneros, founder and chairman of Built to Exit, a world-class business consulting firm that's helped hundreds of clients and thousands of business owners fix, scale, and successfully master their companies. Let me ask you a question. Are you serious about changing the direction of your business, but you don't have the funds to bring in a high-level consulting team? Well, then keep watching. We created the Built to Exit system specifically for entrepreneurs like you. Whether you're a startup trying to avoid costly mistakes or a seasoned owner stuck in a plateau or a downturn, this do-it-yourself system is your answer. Now, this course isn't easy. It's not a gimmick. It's not sugar-coated motivational feel-good fest if you know me at all. It's a graduate level masterclass built from decades of business ownership, consulting, and real-world results. If you're willing to do the work and follow the blueprint we use with companies that pay us 5 and 6 figures, you will finally have a system that gives you time freedom, financial control, and a clear path to a successful exit. So if you're serious about building a business that works with or without you, go to www.b2xsystem.com right now, because everybody exits. The only question is how. I didn't have this on my list of questions for you, but I'm interested off the cuff. You probably have never been asked this question. What would you say are the 3 most important qualities of a great question?
mm. Of a great question. Well, I would say, from my point of view, a great question elicits a very specific, tailored, deep answer. And the quality, I think the best way to get to that question, though, is to listen intently. So I tend to, a key principle in my life is to be present, and intensely present with whatever I'm doing. If
You're
you're not,
exhaustingly present, by the way. And I don't mean
sorry
that in
about
a
that.
negative. No, I don't mean that in a negative, because that I believe that is one of the traits that I carry with me, is that when I'm with people, I'm with them. Like
Yes.
facial expressions, micro expressions, the way that they handle food. How do you talk to them? And I watch you do that, and I know the amount of information that you're carrying around, the business that you're building, the raising of funds, all of the customers that are coming through and asking all the questions. And I know that is exhausting. And again, I've said this twice now, which I don't usually to my guests, but that's another thing that I admire about you. So, third thing, what's the third component of a great question?
Oh man, it's such an interesting framing of a question about a question, right? Um, when I'm sitting there trying to elicit information,
Mhm.
there's parts of this as I'm thinking about it. Is that efficiency, right? I don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of meetings. You saw my calendar earlier.
Yep.
It's back to back to back all the time. So I've had to learn to how to efficiently extract the best answer possible.
Mhm.
um, and so a lot of that starts with being incredibly present with the person that I'm with. I think it also, the good questions connect to the emotional outcomes that the person in front of me is looking to realize in their lives.
Mhm.
um, and so that takes a lot of energy to figure out what that is in a very short amount of time. And it's very intuitive. Don't get it right, maybe most of the time. But there's intuition that you develop after when you sit and talk with a lot of people. And that's something that I feel like I've had the honor to get to do is with that back to back to back. I'm in front of very different people with very different problems, and you kind of start to develop that intuition around what they're really saying with their answers. And so I think if I had to step back even further as a leader in the company, what I am trying to do all the time is get the best answer possible. And often that means two things. One is a very thoughtful question to the right resource. And then the trick is to get answers and create a culture where whatever that answer is, it is. And we're not going to judge it. We're not going to have an emotional response to it. You've heard me say this internally. We have a bit of a saying that's emerged. There's no wrong answers, only quality information.
Right.
Right. And so creating a culture around where people know they can give me the answer as they have it. And then we will, as a team, learn, ask better questions, and then get better answers. And that cycle, that loop, if you will, of learning and creating. So if I had to step back and say, what are the three kinds of things? I think you got to create a culture where people feel safe to give you the answer as they understand it. You've got to understand the person in front of you and how to elicit the best answer from them. But then you've also got to hold the outcome that you're looking to understand or elicit or create, all in your head at the same time while you're sitting there with that person. And that's where I think I enjoy working with the agentic AI. It's not real time where I have to sit there like, what's the right way to ask Jason this question in the moment,
Right. Right.
which isn't something you have really the chance to do and think about. But
Yeah.
with the agentic flows, I can sit there and write that prompt. I can craft that question, or that SOP, if you will. And it's very comforting, if you will, that I can go back and forth in a non-judgmental system and try to get the best framing of that question in that series of tasks that I want it to do before I go hand it off to a team of agents, which could be people, which could be these little computers that are off there doing their thing. But it's the same level of thought as a leader that you have to put into it. With people, it's often very real time. I'm being asked to give answers very quickly. And as you know, as a leader, you're always getting asked to and asked to answer questions and make decisions, which is a part of the gig, right? But with the machines, there's this opportunity to slow
Mhm.
down and be thoughtful about it. And I've found that to be a very instructive process for me as I'm dealing with humans. The
Yeah.
better the question, the better the SOP, the better the quality of information that I'm putting in front of them, of my expectations of the outcome, the better the results. And so,
Yeah, and your application of that, I've seen you through multiple meetings talk to people, and it's funny, the ones that know the least, right? And I've observed this with you. I've observed it in people that are like, oh, I know how to sell my business. And same thing as I've observed the conversations with you. The ones that know the least about the subject actually usually speak most emphatically about the fact that they do know what they're talking about. And I've watched you handle that with such grace. We have a principle in Built to Exit, which is we always attack the problem, never the person. In my
Right.
in my opinion, in business, there's never an excuse to destroy a human being or make them feel less than ever. There's no benefit to that
Yep.
whatsoever. And so I've watched you embody that. I've watched your answer embodies the fact that we should never attack the person. We should always attack the problem. So before we move into a couple of other areas, what I noticed about Ionix, I have these weird, just because I have to filter through a lot of business opportunities, a lot. There's always the brand new tech that's going to be the next $1 billion, and on and on and on, and it's on my desk all day. I've got business plans, and I've got phone calls, and people wanting my money, and put all of and our expertise to build them out. So there's this really simple. It's from the movie Robots, and
Okay.
if you remember, if have you ever seen that show?
Yes. Mr. Robot or robots?
No, not Mr. Robots, the
I
cartoon.
don't know that I have. Okay. Okay.
Okay, and
I got my new Netflix binge.
you got it. You'll love it. There is a character in there called Mr. Big Weld, right?
Okay.
And Mr. Big Weld is like a good robot, and then he's aging out, and there's a younger person coming along, and all they really care about is money, right? It's like a typical thing. And Robin Williams plays this robot, which is kind of breaking down, and Big Weld would like make parts so that they could keep themselves together. But this new person coming in, they're like, oh no, those let those old robots go away, and we're not doing anything for it. But this character, Mr. Big Weld, had this saying, and it was find a need, fill a need.
Hmm.
And it's really how I make my investment decisions, who I'm going to partner with, how I'm going to, the people, because if they are, Ionix, the fact that it exists in the form that it exists means that you were going along with the idea of I need to find a need, fill a need. You said it earlier in a different way where you said you're having conversations to flush out what people's outcomes are, right? And you really attach to that emotionally to see what they're trying to accomplish. I wish I was better on the emotional side. I'm a little bit more of a hard ass because it's just the way that my world has worked out. But that's how I see Ionix. I see you as a big weld. I see you as a find a need, fill a need, and I saw that with the very first I don't know remember what you called it, but it's the very first form of Ionix is now the key to the bathroom at the office. And
Right. Our first chip that we called it our Gen 1
yeah,
was the and it was a whole it was a whole hardware R&D program that I inherited. It was before my time. And then when I got to Ionix after they bought one of my companies, um, it was an acqui-hire. So that's how they brought me into the company. And when I got there and we examined and did a deep dive on that architecture, it was interesting. It was a very educational cycle for me as I began to understand how different chips are architected and connected to each other. But we very quickly evolved past it. And now we're the version that we have, our symphonies are internally, it's a Gen 4. So the second generation was already such a big leap beyond Gen 1. Imagine what Gen 4 is compared to Gen 1. And
it's
so if
beautiful.
you
By the way, you're going to see that we're going to have. By the way, you need to send me the picture of the bathroom key.
So the Gen 1 is a very large, you'll see it is the very large PCB form factor for putting a single FPGA onto a chip, onto a board so that we could network it. And the we've evolved past it so fast that we, as an homage to our past, we wanted to keep it around. And so they had them sitting around in our office, these large kind of motherboard looking things, And we had some folks get locked out of our office when they come in. It's a secure area. And so we turned one of those Gen 1s into a bathroom key. And so when folks go down the hall now, they're hauling a little motherboard down the hall so they get back into the office. So, um, but that's how quickly things, that was barely 2 years ago.
Mhm. Well,
And in a short
and that,
order, we were able to evolve so fast.
yeah,
Yeah.
do something unbelievable that's breaking records. Like it's really cool to watch.
See a need,
And
fill a need.
you know, as you're doing that, you know, find a need, fill a need. We're talking. We did the pre-show prep on this, and you just randomly said, "Oh, by the way, we've got this cool thing called Canon." Right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that because that's just find a need, fill a need, right? Find a need, fill a need, and this is that next iteration. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'll step back for your audience. So a computer is basically four things. You've got processing, you've got networking, you've got storage, and then you've got the software that operates it all. So when you think of compute, those are the four things that are happening, and you need all four of those to do anything. And whether it's storage that is what we call like DRAM or memory, or persistent storage is where you have your files, your pictures, your PDFs, your PowerPoint decks, all that. So as we were interfacing with our customers as we came out of stealth mode just a few weeks ago, it became very clear that there was a gap around storage and what we were bringing to market. So we have the software, we have the compute, we have the networking. The storage was a gap, and
Yeah.
so that emerged very quickly in the conversation. So how are we handling? How do we connect? How do we make sure we store these, petabyte scale um, data that we need to use to train a model, as we talked about earlier? So the team immediately jumped in. We brought in a part of our partner network that is with our R&D, and we rallied around and we put together the compute we call cannons, the storage rather that we call Canon. So all of our terms are music related, and so the Canon is up to 20 petabyte high availability storage. It's very different than what you would typically put together with what we would call a NAS, where you would have high bandwidth. So high bandwidth is where you might have hundreds of users going in and accessing their files and opening up their PDFs and things like that. In the context of high performance compute, typically the only user that's accessing that data in storage is the compute node. And that
Mm,
compute node could be a single processor. It could be hundreds of racks that are fully networked as a single computer that needs
mhm,
storage. So we first principles approach looked at, well, what is this kind of compute? What does AI training and inference really need? And let's build what is actually needed for that.
mhm.
And what emerged from that was what we call the canon. And we can go down to 1 petabyte all the way up to 20 petabytes. 20 petabytes is massive.
Yeah.
It's a massive amount of storage. To put that into perspective, it's 20 million gigabytes.
Wow.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So,
That's more
and
fingers
I
than
think
I
I got
have.
my numbers right there. But yeah, it's a massive amount of storage, and not everybody's going to need 20 petabytes, right? But we wanted to see, and when you think of high availability, what that means is if one of those drives goes down on that Canon, that it is persisted across other drives. And so there's very specific techniques that we use. I think there's actually about 32 petabytes in a rack, but for high availability, we use a methodology called striping that allows us, if one drive goes down, you haven't lost your data. And
Mhm.
so if somebody doesn't need high availability, which I'm sure there's customers that need that, we can put a lot more storage in there and make that available. So what that looks like in the real world in like a data center is you might have rows of compute, and then you might have down the row 100 meters might be your storage. As
Mhm.
far as that compute node is concerned, when it needs data 100 meters away, it's as fast as if it were physically connected to that computer, which when you architect the technology to work for the use case you're trying to solve, you can create those kinds of innovations.
Yeah.
And so we always think in terms of low latency. It's all about moving data between chips, between compute as fast as possible. And there's
Yeah.
trade-offs. And anytime you go low latency, you're going to be giving up some bandwidth. And so finding that sweet spot, but always indexing towards low latency is what high performance compute needs. So it's about moving lots of data, moving lots of information around very quickly so that these chips are never sitting idle. And they're very expensive and you want them doing their job and get through that job as fast as possible for that customer that's trying to get some outcome.
Love that. Well, you've got conductor, composer, and maestro.
Yes, those are Conductor is our low level software. So we're talking about software products now. So Conductor is our tool for orchestrating. So supercomputing orchestration is kind of where you put yourself, put our ionics in your head of how we orchestrate supercomputing. Conductor is that low level bare metal ecosystem for orchestrating across storage and compute across that network. Maestro is our agentic product. So, as we mentioned earlier, often you need little experts that do something. Right now, the way the world is addressing building agentic workflows is they try to train a very large model, which is extremely expensive and extremely complex. In our world, we can put a reasoning model that you can train by itself much less expensively and much well, with much less complexity to reason in the way that you need it to reason for your business, for your data, for your customers. Then when you have these little experts, we isolate those off to much less expensive but very efficient chips. And when you isolate the experts away from the reasoning model, let's say the tax law evolved and you
Yeah.
need to retrain that model and you've got a new law, a new case law that's emerged, you can and almost trivially retrain that model on that expert on that one chip. And this is an opportunity we create in that ecosystem so that as the environment in which you're operating your business is evolving, you can evolve your models very quickly so that you're always getting the best expertise out of your agentic workflows. So Maestro is the toolkit that we're building to not only orchestrate those experts, but also to retrain them and keep them up to speed on the latest information or um, insights that it needs to provide that expertise back to your reasoning model. So that's
Yeah,
where
worst
Maestro,
thing, yeah, the last thing that and a lot of people, especially in today's world, have to deal with compliance, whatever industry, right? Medical, cancer,
absolutely,
like there's some high levels that they have to meet. And we know we're in those industries, and typically what we have to do is keep one or two of our employees honed in on, for instance, 50 states, what are the different laws in cannabis, right? What are the different applications? How does it all tie into federal law? When a federal law changes, how does it affect New Jersey law, right? And vice versa. And so you have to have somebody reading through those things all day, every day. And so for
yeah,
me, I hear what you're saying and I go, oh, okay. We train that person to be the expert, right, on our locations in New Jersey, right? And then oh, something new pops up, boom, it's in there almost instantaneously. Because if you get that wrong in any it doesn't matter what, there's high levels and there's low levels, but if you get that wrong, that costs you money and can cost you lawsuits that ruin your reputation, which is all you really have in business.
right,
And they cost you money and they can cost you your business, right? There's a million ways
absolutely.
for us to screw up business. You and I know this really, really well, Justyn. A million ways for us to screw up business. And it's a narrow window for you to get things right and to be
Yep.
able to see that all the way through to an exit, right? Very rare, very rare.
And as you know, you can get it all right and still fail.
You could get it all right and still fail.
Uh,
Yeah.
there's that luck element or whatever else you want to call it that I think leaders that do have successful exits, I hope, always remember they also got a little lucky along the way. And that's an important, I think, anchoring principle that I keep in my head of as we continue to grow. Of course, at any point, something could happen. The market could shift. Quantum supremacy could come online and in other nation states, and we're living in a dark world for a minute while we get our systems back. All these are very real things that can happen. Not to go too dark, but um, all this stuff can happen at any point, and we're going to continue to drive our business forward. But if we're lucky, we can see it all the way through. So, but then the last piece that you mentioned was Composer. And
Okay.
so Composer is our product that is the user experience. So we go back to our end user is often the AI engineer or the person inside an organization that needs to program these complex systems. So it's on our roadmap. We're building it now so that there's a simple interface for data scientists and AI engineers to orchestrate across complex processor classes. That's a very we don't want the AI engineer to have to understand the architectural differences between Hopper and Blackwell and Instinct and all these other things. We want to obfuscate that complexity and make it easy for them to use the right tools at the right time. Because this is why we see the world just picking one and going. And then they find themselves locked in. It's not the right tool, but they've already got the capex, so just make it work. And all these
Yeah.
inefficiencies emerge and workarounds and duct tape and baling wire everywhere. And
Yeah.
so giving the tools to make that, well, what's the right thing for what we're trying to accomplish? And I've got those tools at my fingertips. So that's what Composer does, is it lets them put that orchestration or even build models from scratch in a simple interface.
Love that. Love that. All right. So extra questions. We're getting close to wrapping it up here. Are you a business owner running hard, burning out, and still not getting ahead? I'm Justyn Sisneros, founder of Built to Exit. I've bought, built, fixed, exited over 24 companies of my own. I've helped hundreds of business owners do the same. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably didn't start your business to be trapped in it. And yet, here you are, overwhelmed, underpaid, drowning in noise from fake gurus and recycled advice. Been there. Built to Exit isn't just another course. It's not a magic bullet, it's a system, a proven blueprint built from real world experience, not theory. We help owners control the 3 things that really matter in business: price, the timing, and the terms of your exit. Whether that means more cash in your pocket now, more freedom starting today, or a full-blown exit strategy that lets you walk away on your own terms, our team knows how to get you there. So if you're done guessing, done with the excuses, and ready to win, visit builttoexit.biz today to schedule your free 15-minute strategy call with a senior advisor. We'll show you exactly where the leaks are in your business and how to fix them, because everybody exits. How you exit is the only thing that really matters. Builttoexit.biz. We play to win. Do you? Because I know if my brain's hurting, everybody else's brains are hurting too.
Hopefully, we got some nice philosophy in there and
I think it's
some
been a great mix, you know.
good,
But
good.
your conversations with you are always, whether it's over dinner or in the office or with a client that we've brought to the table, like it's always really really worth my time. And that's the only people I haven't done a one-on-one interview with anybody for 9 months. You're the first one in
Wow.
9 months because I haven't found anybody worthy of,
Hmm.
bringing, because it has to be something that is really informing, not somebody that's just pitching something. That it's got to be something, because we're right in the middle of an AI revolution, right? And who better to bring on to talk to business owners than you? And I love having the insight because I own a bunch of businesses. It's helpful for me, right?
Well,
All right,
and
so let's
there's
do.
these.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Good. I was going to
No, no,
say
no.
there's these anchoring principles, I think, around leadership that you could apply to whether you're launching Ionics, where we have all of these complex tool chains and technologies that we work with, or a service business, or other kinds of business models out there. There's still these anchoring principles that I think all leaders need, and that's that empathy, that presence, and the ability to articulate your vision, gather resources, and then support the culture in that organization to accomplish that mission, right? And whether you're doing what I'm doing at a certain scale that we hope to see in the tens and hundreds of billions of dollars in valuations to a small business that you're trying to bring to market, that's the leadership kind of pillars that we all have to be able to do to find that mission, cast that vision, gather the resources. Because if your team doesn't have the resources it needs, well, it's a nice PowerPoint document that has your mission and vision statement on it, right?
Right.
And then managing that culture around that team as it grows and evolves is. And that's just skill sets that you just got to go through the gauntlet to create. You don't go to school and learn this stuff. You got to go out and throw yourself out there and fail a lot and get comfortable with failure, and then learning how to get comfortable with success has been my latest challenge as a
Yeah.
leader, because I know what failure feels like and I don't care anymore. It's fine. We'll
Yeah.
get through it. And I don't know what this kind of success feels like. And it's
Yeah.
scary. It's new. And having to just power through it, one foot in front of the other, and keep going.
Well, we have, um, a pretty, at this point in time, I've got some amazing people on my team. You've met a few of them, and a great. And so we start the cycle of business is really getting to a place where you realize, okay, someday I'm not going to own this, right? No, none of us get out of this thing alive, right? It's
Right.
everybody exits how matters. That's the first principle for somebody to go, okay, yeah, I got it. Now I have to build a business, which is a foundation, the foundation of which has to solve problems for a multitude of people, right? And that foundation has some, to our earlier point, millions of ways to screw it up. There's a foundation that is very, very tightly bound for the history of success in business. Okay. We
Right.
teach that second. This is how we do our turnarounds when I buy a company. And then immediately after the foundation is solid, it's been optimized for cash flow, you've got systems, processes, SOPs, repeatable, and you're able to step out as the owner. Now, the next step, you just use the word unknowingly, is the gauntlet. We
Mm,
created a product, a digital product. We do it for people all the time with our brokerage, but a digital product that is 52 videos on how to exactly step by step prepare your business for sale to someone else. It's a secondary track that most business owners don't get, right? Everybody's on the track of I got to create a quality product. We got to have more money than we spend. I got to do bonuses. I got to hire. I got to blah, blah blah. Very few people switch over and go, "Oh, I've got to prep this company up for sale." And the sooner you start doing that, the better prepared you're going to be for acquisition. Okay, end of sentence. And so we have that, and then the third thing or the fourth thing that we build people for, because I've had to experience it myself, is called horizon, right? And the horizon, to your point, is what do I do with success? The first
right.
time I had it, I about blew my life up. I felt like I had no purpose. I was like, I have more money than I've ever had before in my life. Started drinking. You lose that I'm on earth to serve, and you float, right? You float. And so did that, went back in. I screwed with one of my companies that was doing beautifully. It bankrupted because I screwed with it. Um,
Mm,
and so now I've been on the other side of that. I've helped a lot of business owners through into that place that they call horizon, which is what's next. You are on the cusp of a multi-billion dollar company. I believe that. And what do you do with that kind of wealth, right? What do you do with that kind of wealth? It's something that should be contemplated, and that everybody hopes that they experience it. But 90, probably I'll say 80% of the people that do experience it become far more miserable than they were at their most stressful time in their building of the business.
right.
They don't know what to look for. So I'm glad you said that. That was something unexpected. But those are the four levels that we teach people, because I've been through all of them. I just know I'm going to work till the day I die. I'm just going to work. Now I get to work with people like you that I choose to work with. And I
Right.
don't have to work with anybody, right? And projects
Right.
mean something, and projects that leave legacy and support and lift and lift people up, right? So that's anyway, that just you tied everything together almost like you're on my team, which you are.
I love it. We are.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
rapid fire.
I
Go ahead.
think a lot about I do think a lot about that idea of that horizon. And for me right now, and I don't know if I'm doing it right, I just only have the resources and the ability to ask certain questions and get certain answers right now, whether that's a thought experiment or talking to my mentors and things. But I think it's really critical that I know who I am through this
Mm,
whole process, and that the wealth and success does not change that.
amen.
And when I know who I am and what drives my core and what makes me happy and gets me up out of bed early and keeps me up late at night because it's based on that empathy, and that's the word you hear me use a lot,
A lot.
because it's service. It
Yeah.
is. It's what gets me up early and keeps me up late is that I've built a team that I can support, that I have value that I'm bringing to them, and I know that that's going to change and what that might look like, and the frequency of it might change. But um, I, that's why I love doing this. That's why I love building companies and products. Is that I always get to find somebody else to wrap my heart around and
Yeah.
bring resources to bear to solve that problem for them.
It's
And
beautiful.
that could
What a
be beautiful. That could be massive companies, and that can be, oh, my wife needs me to get the groceries today, right? It doesn't have to be this huge thing. It's still an anchoring value that I'm learning about myself. And so wealth is going to come and go. The businesses are going to come and go. My role in those businesses are going to shift, but my value and how I see myself isn't.
yeah.
And I think that's a really important. I'm learning how to do that right now, and it's an ongoing process, of course, because you find that certain things happen and you react emotionally to like, well, I don't want that. Well, why don't I want that to happen? Is that best for the team? If that's best for the team, we should do that thing. And me step into a different role or a different function with that team, and finding those things that create that anxiety or that fear in me.
Mm.
That's a moment for me to be present with myself and be gracious with myself to say like, ah, okay, what's going on there? Am I attaching some part of my identity or value to that thing that needs to come and go? Okay,
Yeah.
let's work through that and process it. So I'm trying to get ahead of the fact that this is going to grow, we believe, very, very quickly. And my role is going to have to shift very, very quickly. And what the team needs from me is going to always be slit and floating. So not get too attached to any of those current state, and more
Yeah.
about anchoring that to what does my team need? What do they need from me right now? And being that leader that constantly is finding the best way to serve them.
I love that. Couple of things that I know about myself is that I always wanted to be a demigod,
Hmm.
like with my health, my how smart I could become, like education, like and along the way, one of the things I learned is that there is a God and I'm not him.
Right.
So that's a really great conclusion to come to, right? I love that saying. I don't know, maybe I'm going to make you a t-shirt with it, but who can I wrap my heart around? Like what a
Hmm.
beautiful sentiment that does wrap you up. Like very, again, for me, knowing who I was, had this conversation with my wife, I came to this conclusion a long time ago. It's about joy. That's
Yeah.
where I live, right? We always can step out. We can be angry. We can be sad. There's all kinds of things that we can experience, but my home is joy. And nobody gets to mess with that. Nobody,
Right.
and so knowing that, then I can always reset to a place of, okay, if it like, you and I meeting only happened because of a relationship of trust between the person who introduced us, right? But you trusted, I trusted, and he brought us together, and that doesn't happen very often. It's hard to trust people these days. You have to work with a lot of people, but to actually trust them when something like this comes along, that's another, that's a whole other level. And we wouldn't
It
have met.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't have met and wouldn't be in the position we're in. I don't think without that. Um, so what a beautiful way to wrap it up. I'm going to ask you some fast, quick fire, and then we're going to wrap up the thing. First off, what's the biggest AI? Just I'm going to rapid fire at you. What's the biggest
Go.
AI myth that you would like to bust today?
There's several of them. That's why I am what I'm doing, Jason. I'm thinking through what's the best way to tie this into the conversation today. Because there's several of them out there. Um, the biggest AI myth. I'm trying to process through technical
Mhm.
technical myths. So I'll do a technical myth and I'll do kind of like a philosophical one maybe. So the technical myth that I'd love to bust today is that AI is sentient and capable of replacing humans. I think consciousness is a very deep concept that we tend to, as humans, project our own consciousness, our own capabilities, our own feelings onto systems.
Mm.
Anthropomorphization, I think, is the term for it. And I think we do that a lot with the machines. But when you understand that these are weights and models and math that has to be operated, and it is these are very actually far less sophisticated than people realize.
Mm.
It's just a lot of math that's happening, and these are just machines. So I think we get fearful and we get scared of what we see the outcomes when we prompt and it gave you this incredible answer that feels deeply empathetic. Um, that's something it was trained to do in the math, and it's a tool, and I love that we can essentially teach it to respond in ways that are um, bring us that joy, make us feel excited to work with the tool. And they're really good at that because it's these, yeah,
Familiar.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. When you're using ChatGPT, you can tell it a nickname and it'll refer to you as that nickname, right? And it's fun to do those kinds of things while we're working with these tools, but it is not a consciousness that we tend to project onto it. So I want to remove some of the fear of these technologies because it can be breathtaking.
Yeah.
It can be absolutely breathtaking, but it is just math being crunched very fast on lots of fancy tools. Um, Philosophically, I'd love to debunk this idea that AI in the long term is going to wreck our civilization.
Mm.
Um, I we are going to go through a period of disruption. That disruption is going to be painful, as disruption always is, and the scale and speed with which we get through that disruption and a society or a community gets through that disruption is going to reflect how quickly they can get through the other side, which is what we often refer to as a post-abundance era. And going from where we are today through this transition period into a post-abundant phase of our society and our civilization is going to be painful, but it is going to enable it in ways that we could never do just with by ourselves. And so
Mm.
it is an incredible technology and capabilities that it can bring to bear, from robotics to healthcare to finances. Um, and where I hope, and it's kind of full circle with our conversation earlier, that research that shows that people that leverage it too heavily actually are dumber for it.
Mhm.
Um, it has to do with how you engage a person or a technology, to be present with it, to co-build with it. And if somebody does co-build with it, my engineers learn from these technologies. They're not made less sophisticated by them as long as they're engaging them properly. So we use it to teach, we use it to build. And if you're engaged with it and you're present with it, you're not just clicking a button, copy and pasting and sending it along. That's an improper use. That's not going to it's not going to make you a better leader. It's not going to make you a better expert.
Yeah.
And so I hope that I can give people hope about the future with these technologies. It is reasonable to be concerned about that transition period. I think that transition period is going to be less technological and more societal norms and laws and regulations than it is going to be the technology. The technology is going to go blow right past, and already has blown right past what our current regulatory and financial systems can support. And I just hope that we can catch up sooner rather than later with those systems, and they match the technology's capabilities so that humans get to do what they should be doing, and that's connecting with each other and connecting with um, ideas, connecting with art, creating and co-creating. That's what humans. That's where you get to demigod status, right? You
Mhm.
have an idea and then you see it manifested in front of you quickly without needing to go build a business and raise capital and train people and support. Now we can co-create. And that's just going to be in this accelerated phase of our civilization that a lot of us are very excited about with eyes wide open that this is going to be a tough transition.
Yeah, I love that. Easing suffering, another first principle for us, for me, is what I'm doing, is it easing suffering, you
Hmm.
know, because everybody's
Yeah.
like, oh, we got to eliminate, because again, I've been 10 years rescuing kids from the sex trade, and domestic violence before that, and still feeding people and all of the philanthropic stuff that I thought I was gearing up for in my retirement, and still do. But business came back around, and I'm glad it did. There was a reason why I'm back in the business space. But it's all about, can you solve it 100%? I don't know. And
Mm.
is that such a big, when people say we're going to end something or we're going to solve something, does that inherently give them the excuse to quit or to fail, rather than, I'll do what I can? I mean, to your point, empathy, the way that you spoke to the server at the restaurant when we had dinner, that's all an opportunity in that present moment to ease suffering for that person with a smile, with a
Yeah.
present, with a care, with a, with the very smart people that you've surrounded yourself with in this company, being with them about something with their family. And these are really, really great conversations to be had. And I'm glad people like you who are at the cutting edge of this are having them. I have noticed that the idea of open sourcing, to me, is a very new concept that is very heart centered, um,
Yes.
at its core. And I know that sounds silly to a lot of people, but it's not. It's the opposite of control. It's the, let's see, let me add what I have and see what somebody else can add to it. Not let
Right.
me protect what I'm going to put out. Obviously, you have to protect some of your things. There's those things out, but this idea that has evolved through tech, um, genius, is open source. Like, let's see what you can add to the conversation. I find that as a very, very healthy. When you say I want to give people hope about the future, that does give me hope about the future.
Yeah, open source is a critical framework with which technologies get gifted to the world.
Mm.
And the tricky part for somebody like me is that first I need to make sure those technologies are mature
Right.
and the certain parts and pieces of them are made public and open because we do have intellectual property to protect, a shareholder interests to manage, and all those other complexities. But there are also opportunities for organizations to open source parts of their stack, parts of their systems and processes, and get the feedback from a broader community that's got different insights, ideas, levels of energy they bring to it, different experiences that they can bring to bear. And so when you open source certain parts and give those to the world to say, look, we figured something out interesting that you can use for you. And the first step of open source is that people will ingest it and consume it and just move along. But there is
Yeah.
a small subset of the open source community that tends to reciprocate, and that group is what now hyper accelerates that piece that we make, we expose and say, hey, look, here's something we found. You go use it for yourself, but we'd love your ideas and help let you contribute back to it and help everybody else too. And that framework around open source, and there's different kinds. There's like commercial open source and other frameworks there, is baked into our ethos. And so as we get parts of our system available, things like Composer in particular, we want a marketplace within that platform that allows people to contribute to it. Hey, I found a new way to link these processors up, or a company made a chip that Ionix has not had a chance to integrate yet, but they went ahead and integrated it within the framework, and now the people can use that chip to solve a problem. That's that. Now the things start speeding up. They get faster. You learn faster as a group, and so, but it's risky. It's scary to put it out there. and you got to know the right way and right timing to do it. And there's a trust factor that comes with it. And but no, it is a part of the future. It's going to have to be. It's going to
Yeah.
have to be. Otherwise, we'll see resources consolidate around a few small organizations that become so powerful that they're the ones in the ship in the sky, and the rest of us are rolling around in the dust. And nobody wants that world, right? So anyway, I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm thrilled to be a part of that piece of our history, where maybe we look back and see that Ionics helped evolve this process and accelerate it. And when I say accelerated, I mean close the gap between the transition period from where it's going to be difficult to where now we learn how to use these tools to help everybody.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love being, in business with you. I love watching all of the advancements. It really is wild, it really is wild. And then, like I said, you're kind of my newest Mr. Big Weld. You're gonna have to definitely go watch that
I'm
cartoon.
gonna have to watch that. Sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. But thank you so much for spending time with us. There's a lot a lot more to come. There's a lot of ways that people can engage. There's a lot of different things where it's changed sort of the business model for us, where we're thinking about on our side. When I say we, I say, my wife, my partners, look at I never thought about having a data center. Now I think about having a data center, right? And now I know exactly what I'm going to put in it. Got exactly the right partners to deal with it. We love representing, through SparkNet, our company. We love representing Ionics. We're honored that you chose us to represent you. Again, like I said in the beginning, I'm happy to be a shareholder, and I want to be a bigger and bigger shareholder as I can, as this thing.
Right.
And that's not something I say about a lot of very few people. Again, like I said, have ever heard that. I usually don't participate in that way unless it's a company that I control. But I really do have a lot of faith in where you're headed. Is there any parting shots, any parting advice? Is there any parting anything that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yes, I would say as business leaders, it's critical as we move into this new era with artificial intelligence to build systems that are flexible. We get new data, we get new chips, we get new algorithms all the time. And what I am concerned about organizations who are just scaling up into artificial intelligence and baking those systems into the fabric of their orgs is that they don't build something that can move and flex, because you're going to learn a lot along the way. In fact, the AI will likely teach you a lot along the way, and you need to be able to have systems that are flexible. That's a key tenet of the Ionix platform, is that
Mhm.
as you're spending the CapEx and the OpEx to leverage these systems, it gives you the flexibility to evolve with your customers, with the needs of your organization in a way that doesn't exist in the market today. And so keeping that flexibility is going to be critical as things move so fast. The worst thing I could see folks do is go down a single path that may limit their ability to pivot later, because you're going to have to pivot. There's going to be a lot of pivots over the next few years. And so make sure your systems are flexible. And that's what the Ionics ecosystem is meant to do, is give you that tool, those tools to evolve as you need to.
Love that. Last question, because everybody always asks this, and so I always add it in my last question. What are one or two books that you would suggest people read to be at the forefront or to learn the nature of this next era that we're headed into?
That's a great question. I'm going to recommend two authors. The first one is an obscure one that not too many folks know about, but he's been absolutely critical to my thinking. And that's Simon Wardley, with his concept of Wardley mapping. I absolutely love that. And then
Just
at the
got that in
high,
the mail, by the way. Just got that.
okay,
Yeah.
it's a dense read, but if you go through it, you're going to think about how you look at that horizon very differently, and it's a very process oriented approach to it. And it's why I'm here today with Ionics. I wordly mapped these technologies 2 years ago, and of course have evolved and pivoted along the way as new things happen as they do. But it was a very critical. It's a very critical one. And then the other one is I love Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma and the Innovator's Solution. I know those are not tech specific, but I think it's so critical for organizations to understand where they are in that launch, growth, mature, sunsetter, reinvent yourself phases. Internally, I have broken those out into about 10 different phases within those. If you've got your three main, which is launch, growth, mature, I break those out even in more detail. And right now, for example, it's explicit within our company that we are transitioning from launch to growth, and that is a very specific phase of a company that's unique. Um, and it's similar when you go from growth to maturity. It's very painful because everybody's been building in a certain way. When you're in launch phase, it's all about R&D, pivot, break, repair, mean time to recovery, all that kind of good stuff. As we're going into growth, though, things need to stabilize. There needs to be a degree of maturity around them while you keep the flexibility. And the leadership around that phase is very specific and critical. And if there's another one, a third one, I know you didn't ask for three, but I think it's so important for leaders to understand. It's called the Cynefin framework, Cynefin. It's a Welsh word. Um, the Cynefin
CY
for
what?
Cynefin, the Cynefin framework. It is a
Yeah.
sensing framework for leaders. And in short, what it is this idea that at the bottom is chaos. And as you
Yeah.
work your way up, you have complexity. And in complexity, then you move into complicated. And in complicated, you have simple. And this is a process managed thing. But if your processes aren't flexible and they're a little too brittle, you go from simplicity to chaos. And that's by itself is an interesting way to think about problem solving and evolving a system. But more importantly, the Cynefin framework speaks to the leadership style in each of those phases. And as a leader in chaos, somebody needs to say, we're going over here. We don't know if that's the right place to go. Very command and control. As you move into complexity, it's a very different leadership style. And when you're into complicated, you're much more hands off. It's much more about like, let's make sure you have the resources to solve the problem. And then when it's simple, it's mostly about observation, monitoring, cheerleading, supporting, and vision, right?
Yeah.
Leaders, though, if they don't recognize their own need for command and control, can accidentally keep their companies in chaos all the time. And I'm sure you've run into those leaders many times.
I looked him in the mirror for a lot of years.
Yeah. And it takes a very mature leader to recognize I'm good at complexity, I'm bad at chaos, and I'm terrible at simple. What are the skills that I need to develop, the people I need around me to help me do better at that? And to recognize the moment. And even another beautiful thing that comes out of that is I'm looking with my maturity as a leader, the gauntlets that I've been through at a situation. And my leaders may be like, we're in chaos right now. I'm like, "Ah, this is complicated. We got this."
Yeah.
And learning as a leader to recognize where my team feel we are
Yeah.
and gives them the confidence and the assurance. No, 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 this is complicated. This isn't even complex. We
Yeah.
we, we know how to solve this. It's just going to be a tough one, and we got to bring in the right folks to do this. But if we define it well, we'll get through that quickly. So I love to tell leaders about those three specific frameworks that are all address very different things. Wordly mapping is about vision and understanding trends and identifying where problems can emerge and how to position your product in the right way to get that exit or to create the most value and stabilize it. The Christensen frameworks are about, well, where are we in our ability? And if you think you're a mature company but you're really in launch, you're going to mess a lot of things up and it's going to be catastrophic pretty quickly, right? And then the lastly with Cynefin as a leader, how do we communicate and recognize where our team members think we are and quickly coalesce around this is where we agree we really are right now. And this is the leadership style that my team needs from me right now to get us through back up into simplicity. So this is a managed process. So I love those three. I spend a lot of time thinking about those, and they kind of get baked into your intuition after a while. I'm sure you have many books that you've read, but and the reason I didn't pick books is because I don't know that there is a book for the Cynefin framework. There's articles, there's some research papers, and then Simon Wardley only made his book a few months ago.
Yeah.
Before that, he was putting his chapters up in Medium. And every time
Mm,
a new one would come out, I'd be like, oh, what's the next one? What's the next one? And I'd spend time reading it. But Wardley mapping is a good one. And then the Christensen and then the Cynefin framework. And I can't remember the author for the Cynefin framework, but um, you put those three things together as a leader and you really bake them into your bones. I think you dramatically improve your opportunities for success.
love that. Love that. Your tattoo.
Uh-huh. Which one?
Yeah. Tell us the
Um,
story behind the two, because I've had to explain my tattoos all over the place. So
you got a few too. You got a
yep,
few too, right?
I do.
Okay, the history briefly was one of my first startups. When I got the investment, I told the investors that if I could get that idea patented, I'd get a tattoo of it. I'd never had a tattoo before then, and so that's this one actually up here. So I got that patent in 2016. I sent the email out to my investors and with my normal bullet points, like here's growth, here's customer mean time to recovery, blah, 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 blah. Last bullet point was, oh, we got our patent issued. It's this number. I didn't get a single email, text, or call about the latest update on the company. Everybody asked me, when are you getting a tattoo? So, and
Typical
since then,
investors.
yeah, since then I've gotten a few more, and I even have a few I haven't even had a chance to go get the tattoos for. And then, so that's this side of the arm, all the technology. But this one is very recent, so I don't know if you've even seen this one yet, Jason, since you were last here.
Oh, since I
Um,
saw you, it's new.
yeah, and as we get into neurons and how our brain works, and as we pair humans with technology, these ideas have been in my head and heart for a long time. And I sat down with an artist and we designed the concept around how humans and technology work together, and that's where the future that I really see. And so I wanted to embody that physically, literally, as a part of my story, as I've been a practitioner of building technologies to help people, that empathy cycle, right? What is your problem? What technologies can I bring to help, maybe not eliminate it, but certainly reduce it and make somebody's lives better. So yeah, that's the story. And I'm sure I'll get a lot more. This one was a single session, and the elbow, that
Bro,
was brutal.
that's a man maker, right? And I know that that's sexist and all that other kind of stuff. But if you are a
Oh,
woman with a tattoo on your elbow, you're just as badass as anybody I've ever met. I this the one I've got, right? It was 64 hours worth of art on my right arm. And it was about 3 to 5 hour sessions, that I sat through. And when they hit that elbow, it was a 45-minute day. Because I
yeah.
was like, I can't do it, man. It is brutal.
I was He told me, my artist said, look, we can do your elbow first and then we'll probably get to a little bit of the rest. Or he said we can do the whole sleeve and do your elbow last and you're gonna hate me.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's do that one. And so we did. And yeah, it was about 6.5 hours, 7 hours in, and then he got to the elbow. And he had to like pin my hand down
Yeah.
with his knee.
Yeah.
And
That's a response to go, what the hell am I letting happen to my body? Well, I got
oh, it's
much more respect
shaking.
for you now that you hit that elbow, brother. I often judge people. I'm like, if you got a full sleeve tattoo and your elbow is not covered, tells me something about you.
I know I'm gonna have to go back and do this one now.
See?
I'm gonna have
See?
to. I
Yeah.
can't. I
You got
can't. After I've done this one and this one's empty,
you got to
I
do
gotta
it.
man up. But now
Got
it's
to,
worse. Now I
yeah.
know what I'm getting into.
Right. I know. Anticipation. Yeah. I was worried about the inside of my bicep, which was actually a day in the park when it compared to my elbow. So,
I know. And the thing is, it's funny. I think this kind of goes full circle in a conversation. Eventually, I'll forget how bad it was.
right.
And I'll go back and get the other elbow done. I'll be like, there, I
Oh,
remember now. And I
yeah.
think we do this as humans, especially as business owners. So like we go, we build something, we have that exit or that transition to the new phase, and we're like, we remember for a minute how bad it was and how
Yeah.
difficult and painful it was, but then we forget. And we're like, I
Yeah.
want to get back into the gauntlet, and then you jump back in, and you're like, oh, that's why I took a breather, right?
What the hell was I thinking? I did that with my wife when we started buying businesses together because I sold and I was done. Like I was like, I'm
Yeah,
done with my business career. And then, I saw what happened during 2020 during COVID when when they called small and mid-sized business owners um, non-essential. It pissed me off. And I had a couple of friends that committed suicide when they had to shut down their business and couldn't pay their payroll and couldn't pay their people. And,
it's brutal.
it was brutal. And that's really what forced me back in to creating the Built to Exit brand. We had Anton J out there in consulting for a long time, and then my private equity firm and all the other stuff. But yeah, so but it has been interesting going back in and knowing the stuff that I know now that I didn't know back in the day. Much easier, but still, every once in a while, like you said, I look in the mirror and I go, "Why are you doing this to yourself?"
And hopefully that answer is those people you're solving it for, right?
100%. Yeah.
And all of a sudden that energy comes right back. You can take that deep breath, maybe do some
Yeah.
push-ups, and then keep going, and because I'm sure you've experienced it too. I had a cot in my office for
Yeah.
about a month. I wasn't leaving the office. We didn't have time, and driving home wasn't I didn't have time for it, and I needed to prioritize what my team needed at that moment. And so
For
um
people's just for people to know, that was a couple months ago. That wasn't
right.
that wasn't years ago. That was a couple months ago. And with your dedication. So business, I always say this business is reverts into the idea that it's just people.
It
Business
is.
is just people. Yeah, we're bringing AI in, but it's still people, and you treat your people well, they respect you. You have some very smart people on the team. Everybody works hard. Everybody's trying to solve problems. Your leadership style, I know, like you said, as this thing shifts and changes, your role will change. But I believe that your heart will always be at the beat, at the center of this business. And I'm proud to be associated with it, and I'm proud to call myself your friend, and I'm proud to be to help in whatever realm I can help.
Likewise, Jason. Thanks so much. And I did realize a statement that I didn't get to make that I think would be really maybe helpful, maybe one of those little sound bites at the beginning,
Sure.
type of a thing. But I think it's going to be really important for organizations to see artificial intelligence like an Iron Man suit. There's
Mm,
always going to have to be a human operating that thing.
yeah.
And if we can see it as something that accelerates us and helps us work better, work stronger, as a co-builder with us, as opposed to this thing that's going to replace us, that's the real world that I see the world headed to. Is us seeing this as something that we're co-creating alongside, and it's just an enabler to help us move faster.
Yeah, I sent my wife just this morning. I sent her this the very first commercial version of an exoskeleton for the legs for hiking,
Yeah,
running.
I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I told her, I was like, that's what I need. I don't run. I mean, the only time I would ever run would be from law enforcement, and I would have to get away really fast before I wore out.
right. Well, so what your wife will do then is they'll go update your app, and then they'll put you in run mode when you
Yeah.
got those exoskeleton on, and then you will run whether you want
Yeah.
to or not.
Yeah,
And then
whether
maybe
she recently got me into walking. She's like, "Hey, do you want to walk?" And I go, "I can't think of anything I'd rather do less than walk.
right, right.
I'll box, I'll fight, I'll wrestle, I'll do whatever, but running or walking or seem to be two things that don't work well with me. But now I walk. We live in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, outdoors. It's beautiful. We get to talk about things. I'm down with the walking thing now.
Yeah, once you find, I think a lot of people transition to walking, but the transition is so difficult because now they got to be quiet with themselves. They're
Yes.
not ready to have that
Yeah.
conversation and become aware of that inner dialogue that's going on and have to do the work there. And it's walking, that's what I use it for. It's just like Okay, I had a lot of things and feels today. I need to make sure I'm processing them and integrating them and not letting something become a pattern without me being aware of it. So,
Well, I know
it's,
why Emily loves you so much. You guys connected really well when, when we were together in
she's
Vegas. So,
great. I didn't
yeah.
realize she was a lawyer until she introduced herself to the group there. So, what was her practice around?
She was in corporate law
Corporate,
and
okay.
contracts.
Contract,
And
yep.
yeah, and she did really, really well. And in fact, when I met her, she was an attorney. This is we're going back 8 years ago now. She's still an attorney. She's still a licensed attorney. She's not non-practicing now. She calls herself a reformed attorney. Uh,
Mm,
when we met at a Tony Robbins event, and I was there because we took Tony Robbins undercover with us on a child rescue. How you put Tony Robbins undercover is another story for another day. But
I
uh,
hope there were like a lot of prosthetics and
yes, yes,
yes.
hat, a big ass beard, like it was.
Love it.
But so we were there for that to be introduced as the team that took him undercover and the experience that he had. And she was there up front with her and her twin sister, and we were in a crowd of 10,000 people and just immediately drawn to each other. And we've been together ever since. Like it was kind of crazy.
Awesome.
She decided she wanted to get into business, and her family and everybody that was around her. She was on partner track in her firm, and for everybody around her, they thought she was nuts. And she went in to start her own business, and now it's a multi-million-dollar success. And her and I've now merged and own multiple things together. But she is above all, like I feel about you, she is above all somebody who cares about people, and
Yeah.
and that means a lot, and I think that that's why we've connected and why I wanted you on the show, why I wanted to introduce you to my audience, and why I think we're going to be spending a lot of time together over the years. So
I hope so, man. I hope so. We'll have fun. And that's the beauty of it. You get to surround yourself with amazing humans that have that aligned core value of helping people.
yep,
Let's go do it, right? Let's go figure it out and build technologies or systems or processes, whatever that might look like, where your gifts are. And
yep,
that's why I keep getting up early and staying up late is working on the weekends. It's just I can't help myself. I love helping people. I just happen to
yep.
do it with big computers.
There you go. I love it. Excellent. Well, thank you for everybody that wants to follow or know anything about Ionics. You can reach out to us in multiple ways. Obviously, Google's an easy way. SparkNet, you can reach out to us on that, sparknet.com, and lots of different ways to find out about the technology. If you have a data center or build data centers or investing in data centers or whatever, make sure you reach out to us because we can do some really cool things. And if you're doing anything in AI, it's worth a conversation with us. So please don't hesitate to reach out, jasonsisneros.com or built to exit dot biz. All the ways that you've gotten a hold of us in the past, reach out to us. Make sure you share this episode because it's going to be incredibly important. There were some great lessons here that you're not going to hear out in the typical interview. If you know somebody in the tech space that Wired Magazine, or somebody that does a show or whatnot, I really would like to suggest Justyn as a great guest. You've just got a taste here. He's wonderful to talk to. I'd love to see him on other shows and to get his name really out there. It's important, I think, that him being a part of this conversation and this transition that's happening all around us is very, very important, and will help inject a little bit more of that heart and that direction in the way that this goes. So he has my highest and best endorsement, and hope that you can reach out to him at ionics.com and lots of different ways you can get a hold of it. So thanks again for being with us. I'm Justyn Cisneros with the Built to Exit podcast. And as always, you can count on 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitter or wherever you watch the show. We do the weekly Built to Exit podcast, 9 a.m. To 10 a.m. roughly, and then we do a live conversation afterwards on Twitter. We're getting around 30 to 50,000 replays of the show. You guys are sharing it like crazy, and I could not be more grateful to you that you're spreading the word and that we're getting some of these thoughts and ideas out into the marketplace. So for me, my team, for Justyn, for everybody that's with B2X, our 30 staff that we have, our all of the people, thank you for your time. Thank you for your trust. I'm Justyn Sisneros, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.